I'm sorry, Marceline. The seats are really limited. Once we invited your father's old colleagues and my old friends, everything filled up quickly, and you're busy with work anyway. Even through the receiver, my mother Evelyn's voice was carefully, almost sweetly coated. Whenever she tried to make me accept something, she always used that voice. I sat at my drafting desk with blueprints spread out, staring at the slow flow of cars outside the window. The sound of tires rubbing against asphalt was louder in my ears than her words. I understand, Mom. Have fun, I answered shortly. There was no need to let her offer any more excuses. As soon as I said that, her voice was filled with unmistakable relief. Thank you for understanding. I love you. Those words stirred nothing in me. After the call ended, only silence remained in the room. And that silence pressed down on my shoulders like gravity. My parents' 40th wedding anniversary party. There was no seat for me. The daughter of the two people being celebrated. Everything began with the hurricane that hit our region 5 years ago. My parents' house was half destroyed and they nearly lost everything. I poured all my knowledge as an architect, all my connections, and nearly $84,000 of my savings into rebuilding their home. I believed it was my duty as their daughter. My father Lyle's tears and my mother's gratitude were enough of a reward for me then. But even after the house was rebuilt, for some reason, the bills kept coming to me. First the property taxes, then their medical insurance, then my brother Corbin's child's tuition, then my sister Laurel's credit card debt. Whenever they had a problem, they called my number. It was never a consultation. It was always a transaction. I had realized long ago that they didn't want my love. They wanted my income. Even so, I kept paying. I kept telling myself it was the only way to hold the family together. But now, I knew that connection had been an illusion. I was their ATM, their safety net. But in their shining family portrait, I had no place. I glanced at the calendar on my desk. The party was tonight. That evening, pretending to be calm, I drove for hours to the newly completed coastal villa I had designed to clear my mind. The physical distance felt symbolic of the distance between our hearts. Only the soft crackle of the fireplace echoed through the wide slate-floored living room. Here, where their laughter couldn't reach, I thought I could finally feel peace. Sometime after 9 p.m., my phone chimed with a short notification. The screen lit up in my hand. The name displayed was Tessa, my brother Corbin's wife. She almost never contacted me directly. A sense of dread rose in my chest, but I opened the message. Attached was a single photo. Under the warm lights of a restaurant, my family was gathered around a table. My parents, my brother and his wife, my sister and my uncles, aunts and cousins. Without a doubt, it was a relatives-only group photo. Everyone was raising champagne glasses, performing the perfect moment of happiness. The photo alone was enough of an insult. The message Tessa added beneath it pierced even deeper. Having the best time with the real family. That wasn't all. Tessa had posted the exact same thing publicly on social media. And separately, many of the friends my mother had mentioned posted photo after photo of the lively party. The likes were skyrocketing. I felt the blood drain from my body. Tessa had deliberately gathered only the relatives from among the large crowd and sent that photo straight to me. This wasn't simple exclusion. It was a meticulously orchestrated ritualistic expulsion. Why did she hate me this much? I knew the reason. My success reflected the failure of my brother and his wife, a cruel mirror they couldn't bear. They lived in the house whose taxes I paid. They drove the SUV whose insurance I covered. Those facts gnawed at Tessa's pride little by little. So she painted my devotion as arrogance, and my independence as betrayal. Marceline is married to her work. She lives in a different world from us. Her words were more than disdain. They were calculated poison meant to isolate me and distract everyone from her own misery. My mother Evelyn's gentle lies were powerless against Tessa's cruel truth. I set my phone down on the sofa. My fingertips had gone ice cold. For years I had been walking on thin ice. But now that ice had shattered beneath me, there was no place left to return to. A quiet anger began to spread slowly inside me. Still sitting on the sofa, I stared up at the ceiling for a while. Tessa's message burned into my mind, refusing to leave. Beyond anger, there was an eerie calm in my chest. A calm that felt almost like resignation. Scenes from the past flickered through my memory. Laurel's college graduation party. My sister, not even the main guest of honor, wearing the most expensive dress of anyone there and handing out champagne to her friends. I had paid for all of it. Then the time my brother Corbin wanted a luxury vehicle just to satisfy Tessa's vanity. "You're doing well, right?" he'd said, as if it were natural that I should provide the down payment. And I remembered the day my mother, standing in the house I had rebuilt after the hurricane, said with no shame at all, "We need a more elegant kitchen if we're going to host the neighbors. The kitchen is the face of the house. We can't invite anyone with it looking like this." My devotion had been nothing more than fuel to inflate their endless greed. I had been tossing logs into their fire, hoping to be loved, while they simply warmed themselves without giving anything back. Enough. I stood up and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the social media post window. At first, angry words came to mind. "I'm done being your ATM," I typed, then deleted. "Have you ever thanked me even once for what I've done?" I wrote, then erased again. Emotional words would only give them room to twist the story and paint me as the villain. What I needed was simplicity. And an unshakable decision. I selected a few photos of the villa I was currently in. The moonlit ocean visible from the glass-walled living room, the still surface of the infinity pool. This villa was the product of my blood and sweat. A place I had built, protected, and nurtured. A place they knew nothing about. Then calmly, I chose each word with precision. To my mother and father, congratulations on your 40th anniversary. 4 years I have paid your property taxes, medical insurance, and even my brother's children's tuition. Yet at your anniversary party there was no seat for me, your family. Therefore I will spend this holiday in the place I built with my own hands. As of today, I will no longer cover property taxes, insurance fees, tuition, or any other financial support. The moment I pressed the post button, I felt the invisible chain that had been strangling me for years shatter instantly. Could breathe deeply. I had forgotten how good fresh air could taste. A storm would come soon. But I was no longer the powerless daughter standing in the middle of the hurricane. I was inside the fortress I had built with my own hands. My post was a bomb that destroyed their perfect night. 5 minutes. That was how long it took for Tessa's triumphant family photo to vanish from the internet. And a few hours after that, the silence of my villa was shattered by the harsh crunch of tires rolling over the gravel. Someone pounded on the front door as if trying to break it down. When I opened it, my family stood there. Party clothes wrinkled, faces twisted with anger and confusion. My mother stood at the front. "Selene, why would you do something like that? Were you trying to humiliate us?" Right after her shrill voice, Tessa glared at me. "You ruined the party." My father and brother stood behind them, staring at me with condemnation. Laurel waved her phone at me as if presenting evidence. "I've always wondered what you were secretly spending money on. So I set your location to sync with my phone. Every weekend your signal would disappear out near the edge of the coast. I knew something was off, but I never thought you were hiding a place like this." Her words explained everything. They had been tracking me, invading my privacy for months. But as they continued shouting, their eyes wandered past me into the villa. The towering floor-to-ceiling windows, the refined furniture, and beyond the glass, the illuminated infinity pool stretching into the night. Their voices fell silent. Their anger evaporated. Their expressions twisted into disbelief. The income of the convenient daughter they thought they knew had materialized into a reality far beyond what they imagined. My mother was the first to break the silence. Her anger vanished, replaced by sticky, unmistakable greed seeping into her tone. She stepped forward and grabbed my arm, tears brimming in her eyes. "Oh, Selene, to think you've been living in such a wonderful place. Come on, let us live here with you. We're family after all." The moment I heard those words, they no longer looked like people to me. They were something else entirely. I slowly shook off her hand. Her touch felt like a desperate claw reaching for my wealth. I stepped back and looked at each of their faces one by one. My mother's face twisted by desire. Tessa's a mixture of envy and shock. My father and Corbin bewildered and overwhelmed, unable to grasp the situation. And then, clearly and calmly, in a voice that carried straight into their ears, I said, "Family, you say? Just a few hours ago, Tessa sent me a message saying I was spending the night with the real family." I could see Tessa's face drain of all color at my words. My mother opened and closed her mouth as if trying to speak, but no words came out. They used the word family only when it was convenient for them, only when it benefited them. "So tell me," I continued, "how do you define family? Is it a temporary contract that applies only when you need my money?" No one could answer. Their silence said more than any words could. I drew a line between us, an invisible line they would never cross again. Listen carefully. As I wrote on social media, as of today, all financial support from me ends completely. The post-hurricane repairs, the property taxes, the insurance fees, your wasteful spending for appearances. Every bit of it. I placed my hand on the door. And this villa is my asset, built by me alone from what was left after covering your extravagances. You have no right to step onto this property. Not one step. Leave now, I said, my voice firm and unshaking, and don't ever come back. Without waiting for a response, I closed the heavy door slowly, deliberately, right in front of them. The thud echoed like the beginning of my new life. Even after it closed, I could hear their shouting and pleading through the thick wood. But soon the voices shifted into resignation. Then the sound of their car engine faded into the distance. Silence returned to my fortress. With trembling hands, I drank a glass of water. It felt like the exhaustion after performing a complicated surgery. Draining but necessary. The next morning I began to act. First, I spread out the weekly forwarded mail that had arrived from my primary residence. Among the stack I spotted a thick envelope from a bank I didn't recognize. Oak Ridge National Trust, a bank I had never done business with. Cold feelings slid down my spine. I set the envelope aside for the moment and called the attorney I had been referred to, a lawyer named Jonas R. Branton, a composed veteran specializing in real estate and financial crimes. I briefly explained the situation, including my family's sudden appearance at my villa the night before. He listened quietly, then spoke in a calm, steady voice. "Selene, you are not only morally justified, you are legally correct. First, regarding the trespassing on your property and the threatening behavior, we will immediately file for a restraining order. They must never be allowed near your property again. As for ending the financial support, that is simply the cessation of voluntary gifts. There is no legal issue whatsoever." His quiet yet firm words gave solid structure to what I had already decided. "Now then," he continued, "please gather all documents related to this matter, especially anything showing the payments you've made on their behalf." At that point, my eyes drifted back to the envelope on the table. "Mr. Branton, actually, there may be another problem." I tore open the envelope as I began to explain. A suspicious loan taken out in my name, one I had never signed, and the possibility that someone had forged my digital signature. On the other end of the line, Mr. Branton drew a sharp breath. For the first time, a cutting edge entered his normally calm voice. "That is not a family dispute," he said. "That is clear-cut fraud." His instructions were precise and swift. "First, we need facts. Contact the bank immediately and request all detailed records of the contract, especially timestamps and the IP addresses associated with the digital signature. I will send an official request under my name as well, but the fastest response will come from you." I immediately called Oak Ridge National Trust's Fraud Investigation Department. As I explained the situation, I heard tension rising in the representative's voice. Few hours later, the bank called back. Their findings confirmed my worst suspicions. "According to our records," the investigator said, The refinancing contract under the name Marceline Arden was digitally signed 2 months ago, on a Thursday at 3:12 p.m. The IP address used matches perfectly with the connection registered to an address in Pinecrest Hills, your parents' home. My hand clenched the phone. But the investigator wasn't finished. And during the signing process, an authentication code was sent to the registered mobile number used for identity verification. The number ends in 3774. I knew that number. It belonged to Laurel. All the pieces snapped together. At 3 p.m. that day, I had been in a conference room presenting designs to a major client. Meanwhile, in my childhood home, my sister had typed in the verification code sent to her phone. And my parents had either silently condoned the act or actively encouraged it. The house I had saved 5 years ago had become the crime scene used to destroy me. After hanging up the phone, I couldn't move for a while. I no longer felt betrayed. What I felt was something darker, like staring into a bottomless void within human nature. They had stolen not only my assets but also my goodwill, my affection, and the last remaining trust one had invested in the word family. The next day, I visited Attorney Branton's office with all the evidence in hand, the bank's official investigation report, the IP address logs, and a thick file of statements proving every payment I'd covered on their behalf. Mr. Branton silently reviewed the documents. His expression was as cool as a surgeon reading an X-ray. After finishing the last page, he set down his pen and looked straight at me. "Marceline, the evidence is complete. There is no room for doubt. This is a deliberate, malicious financial fraud, and it is especially clear that your sister was the primary actor." His words carried no sympathy, only clarity, oddly comforting. "There are 2 options," he continued. "One is to file a criminal complaint, which could result in arrests and criminal records. The other is to initiate a civil lawsuit to nullify the fraudulent loan and seek compensation." I hesitated. Did I truly want to send them to prison? But what they had done warranted consequences of that magnitude. Sensing my doubt, he added gently, "Criminal charges can be filed at any time. First, we must secure your assets and financial reputation. We file civilly, obtain a court order invalidating the contract, then go from there." His logic settled naturally in my mind. This wasn't revenge. This was self-preservation. "Civil," I said. "Please proceed." He nodded quietly. "Understood. I'll begin drafting the complaint immediately. The defendants will be your sister, Laurel Arden, as the primary perpetrator, and your parents as accomplices who benefited from the fraud." When I stepped outside the firm that day, the sky looked a little brighter. For the first time, I felt a faint light at the end of the tunnel. The day the court documents arrived at my parents' home, my phone rang again. But this time it wasn't angry shouting. What I heard was panic. The first message came from my mother. "Marceline, this has to be a mistake, right? How could you sue your own family? Please, I'm begging you, withdraw it." I didn't reply. A few hours later, my brother Corbin called. His voice trembled. "Marceline, please reconsider. Mom and Dad are in a panic. Tessa says she never thought it would go this far. Laurel won't come out of her room. You're tearing this family apart." "I'm tearing it apart." A cold laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "I tore the family apart." "Corbin, do you actually believe that?" He faltered. "I mean, well, Corbin, have you ever once thought about the fact that your life, Tessa's vanity, and the private school your kids attend, all of it has been funded by the money I kept sending? Have you ever considered that your comfort depended on my sacrifices?" He had no answer. He was just as much a beneficiary and a participant in the system that exploited me. "I'm not withdrawing the lawsuit. This is the seed all of you planted. We'll talk in court." Hung up. They were finally beginning to understand. I was no longer their convenient daughter. No longer their personal bank account. Without me, their life of vanity and pretense would crumble like a sandcastle. That night, I canceled every automatic payment I had set up years ago, the mortgage support, the insurance fees, everything. For 5 years, I had funded their life. With a single tap, I severed their lifeline. It was shockingly easy. Only a month later, the Arden family's thin veneer began peeling off rapidly. Mortgage delinquency notices arrived. The private academy Tessa worshipped sent stern warnings about unpaid tuition. My mother begged, "Marceline, please. Just send us the money." My brother accused me. "Because of you, my kids are going to be expelled." Not a shred of remorse. Not a scrap of accountability. And then one afternoon I received a direct call from Tessa. But what I heard wasn't pleading. It was a shrill, hysterical scream. "Marceline, you ruined everything. Our whole plan is falling apart because of you. The kids are humiliated. The house is buried in collection notices. Is this what you wanted?" She cried, screamed, hurled insults. Her words barely coherent. "If it weren't for you, we would have been happy." That was her truth. My existence had wounded her pride, a mirror she could not bear to face. Her entire world had depended on using me. Now without me she was drowning. I ended the call without saying a word. Her outburst had no legal relevance. Only emotional chaos. I reported the facts to Attorney Branton. His reply was brief. A sign that they're cornered. Their emotional collapse no longer concerned me. Months later, the first hearing was held. The sight of my family in court was pitiful. No expensive clothes. No polished smiles. They looked gaunt, shaken, as if life had drained out of them. A court-appointed attorney sat beside them. His expression already resigned. In stark contrast, the table before Attorney Branton and me was stacked with immovable evidence. The trial was one-sided. Mr. Branton presented facts calmly, methodically. Bank records, IP address logs, verification codes linked to Laurel's phone. Laurel couldn't even answer the judge coherently. I don't remember. I didn't mean to." She repeated childish excuses. My parents simply bowed their heads, hollow and defeated. And then Mr. Branton projected 2 images onto the courtroom monitor. The air froze. One was the screenshot of the photo Tessa had posted publicly. The other was the same photo she had privately sent to me, accompanied by the message meant to erase me from the family. The judge's face hardened. The truth was undeniable. By the end of the day, the judge's decision was exactly what anyone would expect. 6 months after the ruling, the Arden family's kingdom had collapsed beyond recognition. Laurel declared bankruptcy. My parents had their house seized and fled town nearly in the manner of a midnight escape. No forwarding address, no dignity, nothing but the consequences of their own actions. And my brother and his wife. Tessa didn't abandon Corbin. Or rather, she couldn't. Her pride wouldn't allow her to flee in defeat. She needed someone to blame, someone to stand beside while she cursed the world. They were driven out of the upscale neighborhood they treasured and forced into a cramped apartment complex far from the city center. Corbin earned meager wages doing day labor work. And Tessa, who once bragged endlessly about her lifestyle, swallowed her pride and took a job scanning groceries at a supermarket checkout. These people, who once looked down on me, now struggled to feed themselves. Their days revolved around survival, arguments, and exhaustion. Private school for their children was no longer even a dream. I learned all of this from the periodic update emails Attorney Branton sent me. Reading those facts felt like reading events from a distant country to which I no longer belonged. "I feel sorry," Mr. Branton wrote in one email, "but this is simply the result of the path they chose." I closed my screen and exhaled slowly. Felt no sympathy. They had tried to steal what I spent years building. They had only succeeded in destroying the ground they themselves stood on. Time passed, and I built a new life in my seaside villa. One sunny afternoon, as I drank coffee on the terrace overlooking the shimmering ocean, the gate intercom rang. The monitor showed Tessa, exhausted, disheveled, wearing cheap clothes that no longer fit her carefully crafted image. She had broken the restraining order just to come here. I hesitated for a moment, then pressed the call button. "What do you want, Tessa? You realize it's illegal for you to be here, don't you?" Her voice through the speaker was thin, trembling, Nothing like the arrogance she once wielded like a weapon. Selene. Sorry. I was wrong about everything. Please, just one more chance. One more chance for what? I asked quietly. She fell silent. Then, choking on her words, she finally said, I just want to give the kids a decent meal. Please help us. Her words were shaped like an apology, but even through the screen I saw the truth in her eyes. Not remorse. Not reflection. Only humiliation. And resentment that life had brought her to this moment. She had come to beg the person she hated most. Not out of understanding. Not out of genuine apology. But out of desperation. I returned her own past words to her calmly, distinctly. You said you were having the best time with your real family only. From now on, you should continue spending your life with that real family only. Through the monitor I watched her face contort. Hurt, disbelief, fury, despair, all crashing together. I said nothing more. With one final click I shut off the call. And switched off the gate power entirely. The children were innocent. If someday they were abandoned by their foolish parents and left without support, then perhaps, I would extend my hand to them directly. But that help would never pass through Tessa again. And besides, everything she said today was not for the children. It was for herself. For her pride, her comfort, her survival. I lifted my coffee cup and gazed out at the endless blue horizon. The sea breeze brushed gently across my skin. The sunlight danced on the water like shards of hope. The world before me was wide, open, limitless. A life where no one had the right to drain, to trespass, or to break me again. For the first time, the word freedom felt real. And I knew, with perfect clarity, that no one would ever cross my boundaries again.